It is Jordan Groshans SZN, baby. He has been promoted, added to the 40-man, straight into the 26, 28-man. And starting at third base this evening against the Philadelphia Phillies, Avi Garcia to the IL. Jorge Soler remains on the IL, and we know now his season is over. We're going to dig into that. Plus, of course, previewing Sandy Alcantara's start tonight, this evening, on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's the Tuesday episode. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, guys, at @MiamiMarlins_UK. Please subscribe to the pod. It's free and available wherever you get your pods. And it's a daily pod, 5 episodes a week, even in September. Yes, even in September, still 5 episodes. And if you are watching, hello and greetings and welcome to my living room. And you will see Shaun Barrett is back with me. Shaun, how are we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Pete. Yeah, late into September now. Not much more to suffer through now, but we get a shot in the arm today, if that's what you want to call it. Bit of excitement, maybe.
Yeah.
All this sort of late season, we've talked about reasons to watch, and maybe we've got an added one today.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. The big news, Jordan Groshans will be making his Marlins this evening. He is in the lineup. We haven't seen the official lineups, but the rumor is he is in the lineup. He is playing third base, which is interesting, and he's hitting the 9 hole. So, the Marlins are easing him into the mix. However, it would be wrong of me not to talk about the offensive explosion yesterday. The Marlins, they put up a 10-spot double-dig in a game. First time since 2012, I think. It has been a long time. The Marlins put together an 8-run 5th inning. Charles LeBlanc had 2 doubles in the inning. Absolutely insane work. As I kind of teased out, I was at a charity golf day, so I was off mainly finding balls in the rough all day, if I'm completely honest. But nevertheless, I missed all of the action live, which was disappointing because there was a UK friendly. Actually, that was the snoozer. The Marlins were vintage in the UK friendly, so I'm glad I missed it. But the US friendly, 10 runs put up. They split the series. Shaun, any key takeaways from this from these two games? A very brief doubleheader.
Yeah, so I caught bits of the UK friendly game, and as you said, pretty much business as usual. So to wake up to that result was quite a surprise. Takeaways, not really, is at this point in the stage of the year. I mean, Berti with 2 stolen bases, currently leading the league in stolen bases in very part-time appearances. I mean, if he can get that crown, that's something, isn't it?
We'll take anything at this stage, Shaun. We will.
Absolutely. And after a year where he struggled last year, he's really bounced back. And to me, he's an asset that the Marlins will carry on into next year. He's cheap on a cheap arbitration year, and at his age, he's never going to get too expensive. So, I think that's one thing that you can take away from that game is that Berti is one of those locked-in guys that I'm excited to see him play next year.
Yeah, it's an interesting pathway with Berti, I think. We haven't really spoken about him a ton on Locked On Marlins, it feels, over the past few months, really. But it's funny, going into the season, right? He was, the designated utility guy, and, he was kind of in and whatever, obviously ended last year. At one point, weren't even certain the future of, Berti with the Marlins. But nevertheless, the injuries started to pile up. Berti came in. He had this kind of stolen base streak that's insane. It's interesting with Berti. Do you see him even, being an everyday player, albeit maybe at different positions in 23? Like, is that going to be his new role now, do we think?
I think a role for Berti, and the way I would like to see him utilised, is that he's an everyday player, not necessarily your starting third baseman or your starting second baseman, but a guy that's going to play 4 or 5 games a week, a guy who's going to get 500 at-bats. He's proven himself now over a period of basically his whole major league career that he's a major league batter, just slightly above 100 WRC plus. that kind of level of play. And when you can play across all the positions, that's an asset to have. If you look at where we were early in the season with Astudillo, oh, God love him, he was fantastic and a lot of fun. But
We
you
love
knew
fun.
when you were watching him play that this just wasn't a major league product.
Yeah.
With Berti, you know every day you're going to get decent defense, a decent bat. The speed obviously still plays. He is a guy that any team in Major League Baseball would find at bats for. So why wouldn't the Marlins?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I'm really impressed the way the Birdies emerged this year. Really am, because like I said, it was concerning times the back end of 21. Are you surprised though they haven't maybe? And I understand why, because they're maybe thinking about other guys, just seeing what they've got. But are you surprised they haven't give Birdie a bit of a run in centre field a little bit more? I'm just thinking, projecting ahead, middle infield, maybe crowded too. Where are you going to find these at bats for Birdie? I think the centre field riddle and puzzle still remains. We don't know what the offseason will bring, but I'm slightly surprised that Birdie hasn't spent more time in centre field. But again, I understand why. Bleday's around, Burdic's around, De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez the early part of the year. But what about you on that one?
I think he could probably play there. I mean, as you said, he's played a couple of games there this year, but we've had that situation where we've had a lot of outfield bats that we've had to try and find room for, and we've kind of cycled through them and given up on a couple of them at this point now as well.
Yeah.
I think the struggles we had with the injuries meant that Berti was always going to be more utilised in the infield. But realistically, he could play double-digit games at every position, apart from catcher and pitcher next year, and you wouldn't be surprised, would you?
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't, and it's a huge asset. Like it truly is to have that versatility with a major league level bat, the speed on the bases, and the whole package is really nice for the fish. He's been a great find. It would be wrong of me not to talk about your guy, Cooper Loop. He is back, baby. Cooper Loop is absolutely back with a bang again yesterday in Game 2. Couple of RBIs again. He's really turned a corner now again, which is great to see. Those 2 months were real tough for him, but into September, he's caught fire again, which is great to see. I'd expect Coop to really finish this year strong. Overall assessment of Cooper Loop now. I know it's rose-tinted glasses for you, of course.
Absolutely, and the fact that I haven't been talking about him too much proves, how much he has struggled in the second half.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the first half was all-star, all-star level bang.
Yeah.
It wasn't an honorary position, although he had to slide backwards into it.
Mm-hmm.
His numbers deserve to be an all-star. And then since then, he's struggled, and there's been an injury here or a knock there. There hasn't been anything too substantial, but every time he comes back quickly, but isn't the same Coop. And I was worried that we weren't going to see that for the rest of the season. So the fact that since he's come back, a couple of multi-hit games, he's hitting pretty much every day at this point. I think I've only seen the one or two games where he hasn't got a knock. So Coop's starting to hit a bit more like what we saw in that first half. Gives me a bit of hope. And as you said, I'm going to go into next year fully believing that he's going to put up all those numbers. And I think he is. That's what he is at this point.
Yeah,
he is a very good bat. He is a guy that can be that number 2 or number 3 hitter for a playoff caliber team when healthy. And that's always going to be the knock on him. But he just gets unlucky, doesn't he? He does. Things seem to hit him, whether that's a runner while he's fielding at first or the amount of times he gets hit by a pitch or fouls the ball off himself. He's just a little bit sort of unlucky in that sense.
Agreed. The Marlins will certainly need a backup plan to Cooper Loop heading into the year, but I'm with you. We can ink him in. And for me, the way things are trending right now, I was a little bit uncertain what the future holds, but it's crystallizing in my mind. Again, we don't know what the offseason is going to bring, but I'm minor elements and don't really go heavy on trades or upgrades, which is possible, but we'll see. I'm going to put Coop in at first base. I think we just lock him in there. I think he takes the majority of playing time at first base specifically. There's too many other guys that I think we need in that DH role, and I think Coop is perfectly serviceable there. They can cycle it, but the way things with Lewin Diaz have played out, I think that the Cooper Loop's going to need to play a lot of time there. Unless, of course, they completely go away from this and enter the free agent market. There are a few interesting first base free agents knocking around. I think we've already been burned by the free agent market very recently, so I'd be surprised if they go down that path. Okay, I think that brings us up to speed. Let's get our ad queued up. into that, and then we can really get into Jordan Groshans, and we can also get into Sandy. Look ahead to what is in some ways, a very interesting mid-September game for the Marlins. Much more interesting than the last couple, that's for sure. And I think the attendance showed that yesterday. I did see Isaac Azut saying he thought there was about 100 people in the ballpark for game one, which was maybe not that far off the mark. He was maybe 1,000 or two short. But nevertheless, guys, delighted to bring to you this episode. And it is brought to you by good friends at BetOnline, at betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. Boy, oh boy, there was a lot of wild ones in week one, no doubt. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events. It includes Major League Baseball, of course, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts. Shaun, this evening's game, Jordan Groshans is starting. Are you surprised at the call-up now? I guess the corresponding move, we must say, is Avisel Garcia to the IL. So I guess then, if everything went to plan, was perhaps that we didn't see Groshans. Avi was back. This is like an emergency call-up, right, in many ways. It's off the back of an injury. So I guess surprising isn't really the question. Maybe it's the other way of thinking about it. Are you surprised that they hadn't actually tried to make this happen in September earlier than this? And actually it takes an injury to get Groshans up to have a look. A guy that is Rule 5 or was Rule 5 eligible, now isn't. It felt like a missed opportunity for the Marlins in a lost season to have not brought him up earlier. What about you?
To a certain degree. I mean, we've talked a lot about these young guys and coming up, and are we going to see enough? At 22 years old, would we have seen enough from Groshans in a month's play? Not really. So that's why I am surprised with 20 or so games left to play that they've made this decision.
Yeah.
You know, we are ultimately playing for nothing at this point. So would it surprise me if they brought up a quad A guy that just, is going to fill a seat? That's kind of what I would have been expecting. So I am genuinely surprised to see him. And with that, I'm also rather excited to see him play. So,
Me too.
He's done what he's needed to do in the minor leagues since he's come over. He's hitting well. And I think the main question for me is where they're going to fit him, not just for the rest of this year, but also I think that will give us some idea or inkling as to what they expect to do with him next year, which is obviously the more exciting prospect.
Yeah, this is the interesting part, right? Because he's up and is in the lineup and is playing third base, which is interesting. The Marlins are kind of cycling dudes around. You've got a plethora of guys that are either playing third base or second base teams, like short in the main, and Miggy's just there, doing his thing. I think it's really interesting that they promote him, and they've obviously been cycling Brian Anderson back into third base as well. I find it very interesting that they don't just plumb him straight into shortstop. Maybe they're easing him in, but I mean, are you really being eased in at third base? I'm not sure, to be honest. I've never played the game, so I couldn't tell you. But I'm just surprised that if they make that decision, Miggy's calling out that his wrist has been dead since July. Like, Groshans has been playing shortstop. Just put him in at shortstop. Why not? What about it's a bit of a surprising one for me that they kind of look to tweak him and put him into third base, which is unfamiliar. When you're making your debut, for me, you want familiarity. You want to feel comfortable. You're looking around the field going, I know where I'm at and I know what I'm doing, rather than, I'm at third base and it's my major league debut and, what's going to happen here? Hopefully a ball doesn't come at me hard.
I mean, he's played both positions, so that is the question. Is he a shortstop? Is he a third baseman?
Yeah.
He's better, apparently, defensively at third, but then the lack of power, does that make you a third baseman? And it's funny that you've mentioned, we've had Berti in third base, we've had BA, we've had Wendell, and now we're bringing up Groshans. And that teases into where I've been in my head with my stat of the day when we get to it. So
perfect.
I'm really interested to see that's where your mind was at. But in my mind, Groshans, I think if he can grow into some power, because he is still young, you can project a little bit of power, maybe. If he's better defensively at third, is that where they put him, with BA being an relatively expensive arbitration year, Miggy being that Gold Glove shortstop, even though the bats tailed off this year? I think the question is where do they fit him, and I think they're going to give him every opportunity in September and in the off season, playing probably some winter ball somewhere and spring training, to sort of try and fit to where they need to put him.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to track him and his Marlins career. What I would say, and I was thinking about this before the pod, that Kim Ang has traded for him. She's made this deal. For me, Kim, I don't think has whiffed on a trade yet, to be honest with you. Okay, you could maybe point to the Adam Duvall Jackson trade and say that one didn't work out for the Fish, but other than that, I struggle to really think of any that we've whiffed on, and actually, the majority of them we've heavily won. And they didn't send, the Bassman still had that year for the Fish. It wasn't like they had to dump him. They've made this move. They must obviously like Jordan Groshans a lot, in my opinion. With that being said, I trust Kim. I trust her in the trade machine. She's very good in that arena. Free agent world, and that was maybe Derek Jeter's fault. But free agent world, we'll wait and see what she can do this offseason. But for me, her trades have pretty much been spot on. And with that, I trust her eye in this one. And so I'm intrigued to see what we get. And the reality is, let's kind of call it out. He's landed and he's just hit at both levels. He's been a AA and AAA, hit at both levels straight away, acclimatized well. And he deserves this promotion. He does, and he deserves some at-bats, and, very intrigued to see what he can do. And then it takes us to, go into the offseason, into spring. Shaun, there's so many guys now that all look kind of similar, and to be honest with you, with Groshans maybe, LeBlanc, Wendell, Berti, Brian Anderson in some ways. Like, there's a ton of guys here now that, oh boy, in some ways, like, have real similar profiles. And none of them are power hitters. Let's call that out. And the Marlins were lacking some serious power. They're all kind of like gap hitters a little bit. And, it's deep. And it's a little bit underwhelming for an offense that has been so underpowered this year. The fact that we've got 5-6 guys that all kind of profile in a similar way. And it's not generally going to lead to a huge amount of bombs next year. But I know you had a stat of the day queued up, and I think this might be a good time to bring that to life, perhaps, because you were digging into third base specifically. So I'll hand you the reins, and you can add some color to this one.
So yeah, we're talking a bit about third base, and I was looking at BA originally, and the idea that Groshans coming up, and is he a third baseman without the power? And it got to me to thinking about third basemen for the Marlins with power. Honestly, it really hasn't been that great. So if we look at the guys from 2021 to 2022. So this all started with BA. So 575 plate appearances over those 2 years. That's just roughly how many BA's had, playing 50% or more of his games at third base. And you look across the league, there are 28 guys that have had that many plate appearances, playing half their games at third baseman. So these are starting third baseman for the league. And you go for power. I'm not going to give you any advanced stats or anything like that. Third base is a power hitting position. You expect home runs. So over that length of period of time, the Marlins actually are carrying 3 of the 4 worst players in baseball, in Jon Berti, Joey Wendell, and BA.
Okay.
They do not get any power from third base.
No.
So Berti has 7, Wendell 14, BA has 15. You've got guys in the 60s. You've got 5 guys hitting 60 home runs over that period of time. So the idea we were saying about Groshans, that he's going to come up and he's not got any power at third base. Well, we're pretty used to that already, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's a surprise that it's that night and day how bad the Marlins are. And it's historical as well. I think the last player in the top 15 in home runs for third baseman was 2008, and that was Jorge Cantu. So nearly 15 years of having nobody at third base with power. I'm thinking Martin Prado. I'm thinking Casey McGehee, Wes Helms for a couple of years. Third base for the Marlins for a long, long time has not been a power hitting position. And with Groshans, it looks like nothing's going to change anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed. And if 15's the mark, I mean, boy, when you look across the league at the moment, you know, like the cutoff there. I mean, I only think of the good teams. It's one of those you think, what are the good teams getting at third base? What's the production looking like? And you know, you only don't have to look too far down the road, I guess. Obviously, the Atlanta Braves have the absolute elite third baseman in Austin Riley. He's at 36 home runs this year, so significant power from that position. In the NL, you got Machado at 28. With the Padres, they're in the wild card spot. Nolan Arenado for the Cardinals, 28. They're leading the division. Who else we got? Brandon Drury's playing mainly at first base, though. Chapman at the Blue Jays. Yeah, Muncy's there. They kind of mix and match the Dodgers anyway. Muncy's hit 19. Escobar with the Mets has hit 17. So I think that's a good kind of, your kind of 15 as a cutoff, I think, is a good cutoff. If it shows where you start to get into the above average, and for the fact the Marlins haven't had any for so long, is a testament. We need power. The thing is, and this is the question, and the follow up is, BA healthy. I mean, for me, I feel like BA healthy all year. That is there, and that kind of what takes us back to this point of what are the Marlins going to do with BA. Like, if they can get him to look after himself, or he can avoid these injuries, and it feels like we're saying this about every player on the roster, but healthy BA for me hits more than 15 homers in the season. I don't know, but I feel like he profiles at least that level. What about you?
I think his most is 20 in the season, 2019, and I think that put him outside of the top 15 in that year for third baseman anyway that year. So It's not like he's an elite, power hitting guy, but also we've got to factor in the cost. He's now late in arbitration, and if you're going to get 15 home runs, 260 with good defense at third base, are you really going to be spending the 10 million or close to that to pay for him when you've got Groshans, who, as you said, they've brought in, and Kim obviously likes. I think realistically they've brought him in with the idea that BA is not with us next year. That's where my mind is.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think there was a Donnie presser on Sunday, I want to say, and there was a little soundbite that came out of that got me thinking about that too. The language he was using was leaning to that as well. And I know when Joe Frisaro was on the show recently, Joe, I think, was aligned with that. I think we're maybe in that phase with BA now where it's unlikely that it's going to be maybe a trade, the arbitration number, whatever it might be, which makes sense. Like, it does make sense. I do think that, again, it's one of them. It's hard to, move on from these guys when it's there. Like, in some ways the tools are there. And BA hitting playing elite third base defense, if he can get back to that and hitting 7 in the lineup, in a good lineup, like Escobar's been doing for the Mets, it'd be a perfect fit. This is all about for the fish. Everyone's trying to step up to be the guy. And it's so hard to do that. And you can't just be one guy in a lineup. It just doesn't work that way. We've seen that with the Angels. They're the perfect use case where one guy doesn't create wins. The only team where that does work is Aaron Judge and the Yankees, seemingly. But, the Marlins are probably going to move on from BA, and he's probably going to go to a team. I actually think the Mets are a wonderful fit. I don't know Escobar's contract situation, but if they do need a third baseman, that could be a real nice fit. And, hit 7, 8 in the lineup. BA had come alive there, and he'd chip in with 15 to 20 home runs, and everybody go, whoa, Brian Anderson, what a player. So it's so hard for the fish. There's just like, you can't compare the lineups really, the Mets and the Marlins. It's so wildly different, makes it hard. Nevertheless, I'm really intrigued to see how we go. I'm with you. I don't think BA's around, and I think this is an audition for the third base of the future. And putting his best foot forward, he's actually playing well. I do have the reservation I have is this Brian De La Cruz 2.0. I have the sense that I wonder if this is going into 23. Would you feel okay about LeBlanc at third base as your starting third baseman? maybe kind of mixing and matching Wendell and Berti. I don't know. Where's your head at with that?
Would I feel bad? Probably not. Would I feel good? Definitely not.
Probably not. No.
It's that situation. We've just got into the NFL season, haven't we? And when you talk about if a team's got two quarterbacks, they don't really have a quarterback, and that's where the Marlins are at the moment with their hitting, isn't it? They've got 7 guys battling to be the bench bat, and realistically, you're starting 5 of them. So that's really where the Marlins are at the moment. Yes, there's probably a guy that could be an everyday starter, but the rest of them really should be bench bats. And it is a case of finding a role for them.
The Marlins have got the deepest bench in all of baseball, I think, but the problem is no starters. They need a 15-man bench, I think. But anyway, Shaun, let's finish up here. Sandy Alcantara goes this evening. We're going to run out of time here. I did want to get into Avi and Jorge Soler, but let's park that one for another day. That conversation can happen down the road. We have to talk about Sandy, mate. He's going against the Phils. Last time out was against the Phils. We saw it against the Dodgers where he went up against the Dodgers. Actually, it was on the road last time in Philadelphia, right? Now it's back home in Miami. So similar situation to the Dodgers one on the road. Had a bit of tap, albeit some of that was attributed to some poor fielding defensively. There was that whiff from Bleday in center field. And actually we saw another bit of that yesterday. It was one of the only highlights I saw of game 1. Where Bleday misplayed one in center field again. It's been a bad week for him. Let's not deviate into Bleday. We'll talk about that another day. But for me, Sandy on a bounce back against a team he's just faced coming back home. For me, everything trends to Sandy Alcantara going 7, 8, or 9 innings today. Off the back of a doubleheader, gassed. Don Mattingly is saying, Sandy, we need 120 out of you and 9 innings. Can Sandy do it this evening?
I mean, he can do it. We've seen him do it before. I mean, it's crazy that, as you said last time out, you got knocked about a bit, 5 unearned runs, but only 3 earned and a quality start. I mean, this is where we are with Sandy at the moment. This is what Cy Youngs do. When they haven't got their best stuff, they still go out there and throw a quality start. I do expect him to bounce back. And, it is a case of, we've got Groshans coming up. We've got Sandy on the mound. These are the games late in September that get the juice flowing a little bit. Compared to the rest of the games, which unfortunately they're a struggle, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been a struggle, no doubt. But you're right. There's some extra juice, Sandy, and Sandy's beat shall be going here in Miami. Let's hope there's guys in the ballpark. I'm sure there will be because the Phils are in the hunt. No reason why the Phils won't be packing out in Lone Depot as well, adding some juice to that. Sandy going, a Groshans debut. The lineup isn't actually in there, but we know that Groshans at third, or we assume we do. It's been reported he's in at third. For us to get our eyeballs on, we do have maybe 2 minutes left, so I just want to get your take very briefly on the Bleday situation. Obviously had that whiff in that Sandy start last time out, which was the most routine of fly balls you could ever get. Like that's the type of thing that Theo throws to me in the garden, and it was that routine. Different situation yesterday, though, slightly. It was more, all he should make the play on, but he misjudged it a little bit and, whatever. So I think, again, with Bleday, we know center isn't natural for him, that he is actually going to end up shifting into one of these corner spots here. I think the Marlins would love him to emerge into a center fielder, but I'm just not seeing that is the most likely outcome here. Probably needs to shift into the corner and basically become Michael Conforto 2.0, in my opinion. But what about you on Bleday in center field?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the situation before, haven't we, where you're taking a corner outfield young player and you're forcing them into center field when they've got to learn the major leagues. They've got to learn hitting at the major league. You're putting too much pressure on them, aren't you? I think he's starting to play himself out of the center field role, and to be fair, that's probably the right decision to make. I mean, I actually took quite a nice fly ball this weekend, so I feel like I would have had a better crack at it myself as well. So I've been beating up on him a little bit about it, but I mean, it is a case of he's a right fielder by trade, and that's what the Marlins are doing him a disservice by forcing him into a round peg into a square hole. That would fit, though, wouldn't it?
a round peg. No. Anyway, we're getting back here now. This is exactly what Joe Prasaro said a good few weeks back, and it was completely correct. The Marlins had some of the guys, but they just didn't have the right positions. Round peg, square peg, round holes. I think it might have been the official.
Way
But you make a really interesting point, because Jesus Sanchez this year, by forcing him into center field, getting him, having to exert all this kind of mental strain, pressure, effort in the outfield constantly, has the impact on the bat. Next thing is, well, that's it for Jesus. Let's bring up a few others, see what we've got. Exactly the same to Bleday. Put him up and make him play center field. And rather than just like go into right, and Anderson's been in right field. We don't need BA in right field. Like, let Bleday go out there so he doesn't have to worry about center field, and just get into the hitting, just concentrate and get yourself. And it goes back to the point I made earlier. Just put Berti in center field. Like, just plug him in there. So everyone else, all the young guys, because what we don't need is these rookies taking one for the team. What I'd like to see is one of the vets stand up and say, hey, I'll play center field, so the other guys can learn the game at their own pace without the pressure of having to play center field. Maybe that's what the Marlins should have been doing here. Instead, they're going down the same they've gone through with multiple players, trying to get them to learn a new position in the major leagues. Doesn't make a ton of sense. I understand what they're trying to do. Center fielders and good ones don't grow on trees, and so ideally they luck out with Jesus Sanchez or Bleday, and they become an above average center fielder. But for me, I'd like to see one of the vets put their hand up and say, listen, Donnie, or analytics guy in the wherever you sit, put me in center, let the guys concentrate on hitting, and then we'll be all good. I don't know. Final thoughts on that one, then we'll get out of here.
No, I think you're right. I think Berti is one of those guys that his bat isn't exactly what brings him to the show. It is that versatility defensively. It is that speed. Every time he's on base, he's going to be a threat. So he doesn't hit much. Hits well enough. He gets on base as well. He'll work a walk. So yeah. I think playing center field would be less of a stress for him. He's an experienced pro now. He's been around the circuit a couple of years. It probably would work, especially better for Bleday. I mean, the idea that we've got this blue prospect, and at the moment, he's hitting below the Mendoza line, and the pressure is on him. He doesn't need to be thinking about playing center as well.
That's the point I'm making. We've got these young prospects that we're trying to develop. Why create this situation? And maybe that's just the thing. It's maybe a sink or swim mentality in the Marlins organization. I don't know how they approach these things, but that's it. Berti, he's an experienced major league vet now, and he won't have to exert the mental capacity or space. Maybe he will. I mean, center field is tough, and it goes back to it's we had the guy in the building and we didn't make the move. But nevertheless, I think that is an interesting topic. We'll revisit that one down the line, and I want to revisit as well and get into the Avi Garcia, Jorge Soler. They're going to both end the season on the IL, as will Jazz Chisholm. So a big part of this Marlins offense that was projected to end the year on the IL, which, it's been underperformance as well from Avi. But I would say Soler was on pace to deliver what I was expecting out of Soler. Jazz Chisholm was perhaps overperforming. And so those two guys, real difference makers for this lineup. And I think it was clear as soon as they both went out of the lineup, it never recovered. Nevertheless, that's us done for Tuesday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Guys, I appreciate everyone that is still with us for the ride. I know it's a tough grind in September with the Marlins, but there are things to be excited about with Sandy and Groshans, no doubt about it. And for me, the Phillies and Marlins are always fun series. So we're going to be back tomorrow, of course, because it's a daily pod, guys. And we'll see how it goes. Shaun may be back. So we'll wait and see on that. We'll see how the game goes. He's also got baseball himself. So he's working on his center field action as well, perhaps as well. So in the meantime, guys, that's me, Peter Pratt, Shaun Barrett, out of here for Tuesday's episode of Locked On Marlins. And we are back tomorrow on Wednesday's episode. See you then.